of days for America and her allies. Crowds before the White House await the announcement from the President that the Japs have surrendered unconditionally.
I have received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government in reply to the message forwarded to that government by the Secretary of State on August 11th. I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan. In the reply, there is no qualification.
Reporters rush out to relay the news to an anxious world and touch off celebrations throughout the country. Washington is jubilant, and in Chicago, more than 1 million sing and dance in the streets in the biggest celebration the Windy City has ever seen. Joy is unconfined. It was 4 o'clock Pacific time in San Francisco when the announcement came, and people were quick to leave their offices for an impromptu, spontaneous celebration. But it was in that city's Chinatown where Victory Day was the most joyous. Firecrackers that had been hoarded for years are set off in a triumphant roar. Seattle let loose all the pent-up emotions of 3 years and 8 months of war, and to the victors, the spoils. The pose may not be dignified, but the young lady is not the least upset. Peace, it's wonderful. The Navy photographer gives us a preview of Admiral Halsey's ambition to ride the Emperor's white horse through the streets of Tokyo. Their rallying cry is, "Go to it, Admiral," and so say we all of us. But the greatest, wildest celebration of all was in New York's Times Square, where 2 million people, by far the greatest in the city's history, filled the streets all day waiting for the official word. A hilarious, happy throng.
Hey guys, welcome to Under God Project podcast. Together, we are accelerating America to be one nation under God again. If you were watching the previous stream and it was disrupted, this is that new link, so you probably are seeing it there. We ran into some technical difficulties just before we started, or just as we got started. All good things come with challenges, okay? So hopefully this is hopefully we live up to the challenges, and I think we will. DeSantis, pay attention. Here we go. So today we are commemorating the end of World War II, the end of tyranny for a time, and preserving the meaning of that sacrifice. We have the privilege and honor to introduce a very special guest in just a minute. But before we get started, we sent a poll out to just on our social media channels, and we asked we asked friends, followers, and those who are on social media whether they knew what VJ Day meant. And I'm proud to say over 90% of people answered that it meant the end of World War II, victory over Japan Day, and recognized that it was the end of World War II. We only have 10% that thought it was, what did we say? Valentine's Day Jubilee, I think, was the second one. So we had a little bit of fun with that. So way to go, America. So here's the thing. We have a little over 150,000 U.S. veterans left of the 16 million that served in World War II. By the end of this year, according to World War II veteran statistics, we'll have less than 100,000 World War II veterans. And today we want to preserve the meaning of their sacrifice. And your family compacts, the compacts that you make through Under God Project and the activities that we have here, help to preserve the meaning of that sacrifice. It was part of why we put Under God Project together. In fact, yeah, it's part of how we put that all together. Now, for those who are new, Under God Project podcast is an extension of Under God Project. We created Under God Project before the podcast. So Under God Project is a series of activities that families, congregational leaders, and civil servants can do to invite God into our national identity. Again, we started with the plan, we started with Under God Project, and then we created the podcast. So it's more than just about listening. It's more than talking about really great things, and it's more than talking to really awesome people. But we start with the action, and we go from there. And the first thing that we can do, it all starts at the kitchen table. So Under God Project is a fun in-home family compact experience where you're inviting God into your home and declaring that we are one family under God. Those who do that and join the Under God Project family, we are uniting the American family. We are accelerating America to be one nation under God again. So join the family, get yours today. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it. We announced it before, but just a reminder: don't worry about the price, guys. I know, I wish I could make them for free. Jump onto the other podcasts. You'll see what they are, what they're made of, and all that other stuff. I wish it was free. It's not. But what we do have is a model. We do have a pay it forward model. So we have donors that are waiting for matches, people that will match and essentially pay it forward to those that it's just that just can't afford it today. The economy right now is affecting so many people in just a variety of different ways. Honor system, though, y'all, if it is something that you can do, get one for your family, and if it's something that you can pay it forward, become a donor and pay it forward for somebody else. Every family gets a card in their package that says your in-home compact family experience was paid forward by such and such family if they want to have their name read out loud. There's a lot to that. We'll talk about that toward the end here. But I don't want price to be a barrier for you and your family. So get yourself on the list if that's not something you can do, and if it's something that you can do, pay it forward for someone else. So after this conversation that we have after the live stream, we're going to have a separate live stream that is going to be a question and answer for our members with our special guest. So you'll have direct access to our special guest today. You'll find the link to that on our app. So jump onto Apple iOS if you got iPhones, or the Google Play Store. Jump in there. You can do it while we're listening. We're gonna have a good conversation today. Download the app. Get yourself a membership. Just get yourself in the app. Create yourself the profile, and you'll see the link right on my post there. You'll see the post. It will be one of the top posts there, and you'll be able to jump in and start join in the conversation after that. So, okay, that was a lot of little administrative things. So let me introduce our guest. Our guest today is Don Fotheringham. Private First Class Don Fotheringham is a World War II veteran, awarded a Bronze Star for valor in the face of danger, saving the lives of the wounded at Iwo Jima. Now, we have a citation I'm going to read in a second. I'll tell you what that is in a minute, but it's very rare that we have somebody as special as Don is to join us on the podcast, or even just to know him. And so, really great person. Like I said, we'll have less than 100,000 veterans by the end of the year, let alone those that fought and survived at Iwo Jima, let alone those that received awards at Iwo Jima, and definitely those who have dedicated their lives as he has to protecting and preserving the Constitution for his life the way that he has. It's going to be a great conversation today, and I'm going to go ahead and jump in and read the citation. So when you are awarded, when you get the privilege to be awarded a whether it's a Medal of Honor or an award of valor, there's usually a citation that goes along with that. So it's a document that says why you're awarded that. So I'll just read that top to bottom. So this is from the headquarters, 4th Marine Edition, Fleet Marine Force, Fleet Post Office, San Francisco, California, Semper Fidelis. So he was a Marine. and the name of the President of the United States, the Commanding General, 4th Marine Division, Fleet Marine Force, takes pleasure in awarding the Bronze Star Medal to Private First Class Don L. Fotheringham, number 817184, United States Marine Corps, for service as set forth in the following citation. Quote, for heroic services in the connection with operations against the enemy on Iwo Jima Volcano Islands on March the 2nd, 1945. Serving as a driver in an amphibian truck company, Private First Class Fotheringham had been assigned the duty of evacuating casualties from the beach to the hospital ships. While thus engaged, the beach received heavy fire from enemy mortars and artillery. Although warned to take cover, he refused to abandon his task, and with complete disregard for his own safety, he continued his efforts to remove casualties from danger. His courage and skill proved instrumental in saving the lives of men already seriously wounded. His courageous conduct was in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Major General U.S. Marine Corps. So, Don, welcome to the podcast. It is an honor to have you, sir.
Thank you very much, Andy. I'm very pleased to be here with you.
Excellent. Oh my goodness, we're finally talking. This is fantastic. Now, just so you guys know, Don and I have kind of had this conversation in a variety of different ways, several different times, and today is the official day. So here we are. Don, let's start a little bit with the beginning of your service. So we've got a little bit of an introduction. When did you join the Marine Corps?
Okay, I went in the Marine Corps after my birthday, February of 1943. I was in all of 43, 44, and all of 45, so it was just about 3 years that I was in the Marine Corps.
In the Marine Corps in World War II, so 1943, 1945. That's amazing. Now, so how old were you at the time?
Well, that's here comes the big confession. I registered on my, on my 16th birthday, I registered as if I was 18. At that time, all the young men were required to register for the draft. And so I used my draft card for identification to get in the Marines. So I reported myself as 18 years old on my 16th birthday. And then I used my draft card, a document that I got from the Selective Service. I took it over to the Marine Corps headquarters and enlisted in the Marine using that for my identification. So I was about 2 years too young, but I did get in and things went pretty well.
So you lied about your age to join the Marines to go fight somewhere and sacrifice your own life. What inspired you to do that at all, sir?
Well, there were plenty of things to inspire. World War II was a very patriotic period in the United States. All of the young men wanted to help defend the country and also to reply to Pearl Harbor, which was, as you know, was invaded without warning and without cause, and caused many deaths and a great deal of destruction. My particular situation was I was working during the summer at Tooele, Utah, at the Ordnance Depot there, and I was in a boarding house with a young man who only had one leg, and he had lost a leg at Pearl Harbor. He was one of the victims. He was in the Marine Corps at Pearl Harbor. And so every day he talked to me about the importance of being a Marine, the importance of being in the Marine Corps. And he had his uniform there, and he put his uniform on me and a hat and all the medals. And he said, you need to be a Marine. So he kind of convinced me that I really needed to be a Marine. That was my motivation.
What a motivator, Don. You didn't share with me all those details. This is great. So your roommate and friend was with you. He had lost his leg. Do you remember his name?
I do not remember his name. I wish I did. Many years ago, but
Many years ago.
no, I do not remember his name. I did at first, but I don't remember it now.
You know, it's so interesting that the people that we meet, the impacts that they have on us, and impacts they have on our lives. Sometimes we don't remember their names, but they can be so impactful. The meaning of our friendships can be just so impactful.
Oh, he had a tremendous influence on me, and he wasn't hopping around feeling sorry for himself for the loss of his leg. He was more proud of America and the importance of replying to his offense. I was going to answer him in the Marine Corps so that the service he began could be continued.
So, due to the inspiration of a friend, you joined them. Now, give me a mental image, Don. Were you a skinny kid like me growing up? Thin as a rail and baggy jackets.
I was skinny, but I was fairly tall. I was about 5'9" when I was that age, and I think a few of the recruitment officers didn't really believe I was that old, but they were desperate for enlistment.
So they
desperate.
So although you could have passed for it anyway, they kind of looked at you like, well, look, we need you, so just go, right?
If it hadn't been so desperate, I probably wouldn't have got in underage.
Right, exactly. Well, so okay, so here you are, 15, 16 years old. Your friend is saying, hey, look, you've got to go take my place. Here, wear my uniform, wear my cap. And you're seeing yourself in that uniform and in that cap, and really just saying, wow, yeah, this is something that I really have got to do, and I just can't stand it any longer, and I just want to go now, right?
Yeah, and there was a little personal pride there too, because he insisted I walk down South Temple Street in Salt Lake in a uniform, and the thing that impressed me most is the girls looked at me and smiled, and first time the girls ever looked at me, I was in that uniform.
Of course.
I couldn't resist that opportunity.
Well, when the girls are looking at you, like, what? Oh man, Don, this conversation gets better every time.
Yeah, it was really.
Of course. Oh man. Well, what a great. Yeah. Look, I'm in. Okay. So now, okay. So tell me a little bit. We're Under God Project, and and if it's okay, share with us as much as you're comfortable with. But what was your relationship with God at this time? Were you just a normal 15-year-old, through adolescence, kind of growing up, or did you have a solid foundation of God and faith? Where was your mind? Where was your heart at with God at this point?
Well, I would have to admit that I was a believer, but I wasn't what you would call a righteous young man. I didn't really understand the faith that I was in, and I didn't understand the wonderful personal relationship that a person could have with God. I didn't really turn to the Lord with all my heart until I was afraid, until I was frightened. I was on the ship, the troop ship headed for the Marshall Islands, which is the first invasion I was in 1944. And on my way to the Marshall Islands, I thought, I might get killed. And if I get killed, I don't have a good relationship with God. And so this is what you call, well, we used to in the Marine Corps, they called it foxhole religion. I got
foxhole religion.
Foxhole religion is not the most sincere. It's just you're scared to death. And I was so afraid of getting killed that it was the first time I said a really sincere prayer. And from that time on, it stuck with me. I didn't betray it by going back to my wicked ways as soon as I got off the front line. So I stuck with it, fortunately, and I'm very grateful that I did. And I guess that's where you might call the Under God Project applies.
Yes, sir. I would say so. We all have different moments of faith. We all have different moments where we're connected with God. And quite frankly, I really appreciate that, originally that normal, normal adolescent spiritual maturities as their spiritual as your adolescence is growing into maturity, your spirit is growing at the same time, and yet your thirst for patriotism draws you to want to go and protect and to even get some attention from the girls, and while you're there, you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, there are a lot of factors there that don't necessarily make me a hero. Oh, you want to present me as a hero? I was really scared to death.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. No, but that's exactly why you are one, and that's exactly why I think so. Is because even in the face of fear, your faith is tried and it's strengthened, and then and that's where the courage is, right? So, well, of course. Okay, so we get foxhole religion as we go through. So let's talk about Iwo Jima for a minute.
Sure.
I think this is some of the most fun. Now you and I went through kind of how it worked. Tell us what's your job at Iwo Jima. So actually, let's back up a little bit. You're on Maui, so you go to Maui to do training in the job, etc. We'll talk about. We'll come back to the popular science contest that you entered in a little bit. But you're on Maui. You're training, and then what happens? Where do you go from there?
Well, I was training to be an amphibious truck driver. And, recently we've seen Lahaina in the news and the terrible fire they had there. Well, I spent a lot of time on that beach at Lahaina. I knew the area very, very well. And that's where I trained landing and operating an amphibious truck. Amphibious truck was a wonderful thing, especially for something that was developed during the war, because it had features that were extremely advanced for 1944 and 45. For example, you're landing. You have a boat that is actually built on the framework of a GMC 6x6 truck. So I had a six-wheel drive boat and a six-wheel drive truck all in one.
Whoa.
And normally when you land on the beach, your front wheels sink in the sand and they won't pull you up out of the water. General Motors developed a device where you could deflate the tires while you're driving.
Whoa.
And you could inflate the tires while you're driving.
In 1945.
So,
wow, 1943.
That was a marvelous thing. I loved it. I loved they called them the Duck, DKUW was the GM code for it, but we call them Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ducks could get up and out of the water and back into the water really fast. So it was a wonderful machine for World War II, and that was what I was trained to drive.
Okay, so you're trained to drive the Ducks, these GMC six-wheel monsters.
And all six wheels deflated at once when you pulled the lever down on the dashboard.
Geez.
There was a gauge on the dashboard that had the air pressure. And when I was landing on Iwo Jima, the wheels started sinking, and I had them set at 20 pounds. I pulled the lever down, clear down to 10 pounds, which is almost a flat tire. And those tires widened out wide enough and flat enough to grip the sand and pull me up on the beach.
That is really cool.
A marvelous thing, yeah, really marvelous thing.
I'm driving a Silverado that doesn't do that.
Once I got up on high ground, I pulled the lever up and ran the tire pressure back up to 40 pounds. So, wonderful thing.
That's absolutely incredible. I mean, that technology's been around for that.
Yeah,
that
way
long
back
time.
in 1944.
Yeah, that's great. That's so you're driving the GMC, the Duck, and tell us about the teams that are on there. You got somebody driving shotgun with you.
Well, I was in what was called the 4th Amphibious Truck Company,
okay,
which was separate from the 4th Marine Division, but was assigned, wherever we were needed. And on Iwo Jima, I was assigned to, or the 4th Amphibious Truck Company was attached to the 4th Marine Division. Mm-hmm. So My job was to haul a 75 millimeter howitzer up on the beach to a pre-designated location. They showed me exactly on the map where they wanted me to unload the 75. And once that was unloaded, I would go to the hospital tent. There I would pick up casualties, put them in my duck, drive them out to the hospital ship, unload the casualties at the hospital ship, go from there to the ammunition barge, which we had there, pick up more 75 millimeter shells, take them to the gun site, unload them there, go back and pick up more casualties, and that was a circle. Was ammunition in and casualties out for 34 days.
Wow.
Around the clock, day and night.
So Iwo Jima is a 34-day or 36-day engagement. You showed up on the first day, right? So it's a 34-day engagement.
I landed on D-Day. I landed at 11 a.m. D-Day, just before noon.
Okay.
That was, by the way, that was my 18th birthday. It was February the 19th.
You're an official Marine.
The Jets really celebrated my birthday with a lot of fire.
Exactly. You're legal now. Here we go. Right. You get shot at now. Okay, so your job is to haul ammunition, supplies to, and then bring casualties back. Now, when you mean casualties, or when you say casualties, these aren't those that have passed away. These are those who have injuries that need to be repaired very quickly.
Injury. Yeah. The hospital ship was exactly that. It was a huge hospital.
Uh-huh.
The great white ship with a big red cross on it. And it was, fortunately, by the grace of God, it was never fired on.
Oh, wow.
And the United States never fired on a Japanese hospital ship.
Oh, wow.
They were regarded sacred by both sides of the war.
Really?
Yeah, they were.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool.
They never sunk a hospital ship. Never one got hit, and they weren't armed either. The hospital ships didn't have any armor at all.
Really?
No weapons, I should say. No cannons or rockets or anything.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so who are you driving with? You're bringing casualties back and forth.
I have a partner. Fantastic young man who was assigned. We were two to a dock, and he was from North Carolina, and we really got along great. We made a good team. We were willing to do whatever we were supposed to do at the time we're supposed to do it. Amazing.
How would they evaluate the job of a driver? Is it the amount of people that are coming back and forth, or just how many times you go back and forth, or just go and come back and it doesn't really matter?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean.
Sounds like you guys did a great job. That's all, right?
We did do a good job. We were extremely dedicated to our work.
Excellent.
We had an experience that might be of interest, I think. It's kind of weird. At about D14, about 14 days after the war began.
Is that the Bronze Star experience?
No,
okay.
It's not the Bronze Star.
Okay, hold on that one. Yeah, you tell me that one because I want to get the Bronze Star in just a second. But go ahead. Sorry.
You wanted me to do the Bronze Star? I'll tell you that first.
No. I want to build up a little bit more. I want to get a better picture. So go ahead, share that story first. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. We were on the beach. We had just unloaded our ammunition at the gun site, and we were heading for the casualty tent when there was an alarm sound, an air raid alarm, and all the ship's loudspeakers ordered all amphibious vehicles off the beach. So here we were right on the beach, and so we ordered off the beach, and that means you go back into the water. So we drove our duck into the water, and as soon as we got in the water, all the ships were anchored there, laid a smoke screen. We didn't have radar in those days, and the smoke screen would hide the ships from the aircraft. So they laid the smoke screen, and here we are in between all these ships, pulling up anchor, heading out to sea, in this dead black smoke screen. We could not see 2 feet in front of us.
Oh, wow.
and of course, you couldn't turn on any lights or anything. We couldn't turn on the compass. So we only had one choice, and that is to move out to sea in the same direction as the ships. Otherwise, we'd get rammed.
Whoa,
We're
yeah.
afraid to. We knew the ships couldn't see us. So if we got in front of one, we'd be dead. So what did we do? We went parallel to the ships as long as we could, and that lasted all night long.
Whoa.
And by the time morning came and daylight came, we were out at sea in an amphibious truck with no land in sight and no ships in sight. We were lost at sea in an amphibious truck.
Oh, jeez.
We didn't know which way where Eagle was or anything. So this is really, who would think that such a thing could happen?
Right.
Now, we were talking about Unite Under God Project, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, my friend and I, my partner and I in the duck, we got religion really fast.
There you go.
And it wasn't long after we started praying. Let me give you 2 other things, too. The engine had to be running in order for the bilge pumps to run. And the ducks take on a lot of water, and it requires 3 bilge pumps to keep the hull dry so you don't sink, keep the water out of the hull. So here we are, almost out of fuel. It's not farther than we could see. All we could see is the horizon in every direction. Saying our prayers, and here comes a U.S. destroyer. And I hope he sees us. We saw the destroyer come in. Sure enough, they did see us. They pulled up alongside, and an officer on deck had a megaphone and yelled down to us, says, "Are you all right?" And I yelled back, I said, "Yeah, we're all right." I said, "But we're lost, we're out of fuel." And so they lowered 2 5-gallon cans of gas. Oh no, he asked what kind, gas or diesel. I told him it was gas. So they lowered the gas and then asked if we were hungry, and we said yes. And they lowered a bag of I think they were tuna sandwiches and a bottle of lemonade.
Heavenly tuna sandwiches.
Yeah, lemonade and tuna sandwiches. And then the captain with this megaphone says, "No, what else can we do for you?" And I said, "Tell us which way is evil." Said,
Where's the war?
Where's the war? We had to get back into the war. And so he said, "Well, set your compass at was it north-northwest? I believe. No, it was set your compass at north-northeast."
Okay.
And he says, "You'll be there in about 5 hours." Well, he didn't know how slow the ducks were. It took us all day to get there.
Oh, jeez.
But we did get back.
Oh, wow.
And if you can, talk about a miracle.
Absolutely.
We would have been because the pumps were about to quit. If we ran out of gas, we would sink.
Oh, my goodness.
And we just barely got enough gas in there to get back to Eagle. And there's a miracle.
Absolutely.
Really.
Holy cow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Thank you so much. You're saving all the good details for the audiences, Don. I'm surprised by these. These are great. These are great. Okay, so Iwo Jima's happening now. Tell us a little bit about. So you're all day, every day. You and your companion. Do you remember his name?
As close as we were, and I
Mm-hmm.
from time to time I do. Let me just think about it for a minute.
Okay, might come back to it. But you two are going back and forth, dropping off ammunition, picking up the wounded, aka casualties, bringing them back to the hospital ship, just going back and forth all day long.
All day, constantly, yes.
Wow. And let's see, you're going to a casualty tent, so you're not pulling them out of the field necessarily. You're pulling them back and forth.
No, they've been pulled out of the field, and they called they were Navy personnel who were trained in like ambulance attendants.
Okay.
Corpsmen, they call them the corpsmen. And the corpsmen would have them in stretchers and ready to load into the dock when we got there.
Okay.
And of course, there were many more wounded than we could haul, so they would put in the worst cases, whose lives needed to be saved immediately. And let me say something about the hospitals too, because the name of this ship that I went to most of the time was called the USS Samaritan, a beautiful name for that kind of a ship.
Yeah.
But the men and women on that ship were incredible. You could see the look on their faces, the anxiety and the eagerness to save the lives of those young Marines. And when they would hoist them up to the main deck, and then they would rush them into operating rooms, and they were fast, and the women nurses, their eyes were full of tears, and determination to save the lives, to save those lives. It was just wonderful the way they did. So you wanted to know about the Bronze Fire? Is that what you want me to mention here?
Don, thank you so much for sharing that. It is such a it's so good to hear the just the commitment and the valor.
The valor there was just incredible.
Tell me,
and it was incredible 99% of the time. We had a few cards, and I didn't know who they were till they showed their colors. But I'd been on the dock for quite a few days, and one day the captain said, "Don, why don't you come down here in the pit and take a rest, and we'll let Stacy take your place on the dock." And I said, "Well, yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to do that." So the officers' headquarters on Maui, at least for the 4th Amphibious Truck Company, was a huge bomb crater, and it was below the surface, so that all the shells and bullets would go over the top. They couldn't get down into the crater, so it was a pretty safe place to be. And so they relieved me. They put this, replaced this one guy for me. And he hadn't been gone long before. So I'm running up the beach. And I yelled at him. I said, "Stacy, where the hell are you going?" And he says, "It's hot down there." And that means under heavy fire. And I said, "Well, where are the casualties?" And he says, "They're in the dock." And I said, and I will be honest with you, my words were, "Stacy, you son of a bitch." And I ran full speed. You know, he was so chicken, and he left these dying men there to be finished off by the Japs. So I ran full speed, jumped in the dock, and started the engine and drove directly into the water with him and took him to the hospital ship. And that, I did not know anybody had seen that. I didn't know I had a Bronze Star from that until I got back to Maui. They announced the awards, and my name was on the list, and they had us all in a little assembly and played some Star Spangled Banner or something, and put a medal on each one of us.
Wow.
I didn't know I'd won anything until later. I didn't know anybody even saw what happened.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm glad they didn't quote me, because I was pretty rude to Stacy.
Well, you know, we all have our moments.
I was not very kind to the guy.
Yeah, well, and that's okay. I mean, what is it, the war? You know, I mean, you're just shooting at people and saving lives.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit. I think it's excusable. It's totally fine. So you go and get in the. You recognize there's that Stacy has left. That your companion has left the wounded, and so you head down. Were you under heavy fire, or did you just weren't even paying attention to the mortars you're dodging? Was it a straight shot? Did you have to duck and cover at all?
Well, you couldn't duck artillery. Iwo was not a rifle-to-rifle battle.
Okay.
It wasn't that. It wasn't a typical battleground. There were 20,000 Japanese defenders on Iwo, and they had pillboxes and underground. They had, I think, it was 22 miles of underground tunnels on Iwo, so they could pop up anywhere and fire anywhere. So we weren't dodging bullets, and you can't dodge artillery. You're either going to be there where it lands, or you're not going to be where it lands. So they were. You can hear them going overhead. It's a certain sound that every Marine is. Everyone is petrified by it. Kind of it sounds like something like this. And you can hear them going over your head. And if you don't hear them going over your head, they'll land ahead of you somewhere. So that's where the casualties were, and it was before I left Iwo, they had killed 6,000 Marines. 6,000.
My goodness.
And if you want to know the price of freedom, you have to see that many men piled up, dead. It is horrible.
Jeez.
Just horrible.
Thank you very much for your valor and your service. We really, I really appreciate this conversation, and I appreciate you.
Okay.
So, you didn't realize that you were doing anything necessarily heroic, more along the lines of stepping in the somewhat of the dereliction of duty by a fellow Marine. You go in, pull out your friends, your patriots, and bring them back to get them the care that they need, and then just went right back to work and did everything else.
I'm not sure how I can't say that everyone felt this way, but I'll tell you how I felt, and many Marines that I've talked to. In the first place, most people, at least in the civilian world, they think that you're going on the battlefield horrified over what's going to happen to you, and worried about staying under cover or wearing armor and dodging the bullets and so forth. But on the battlefield, it's not that way. It wasn't that way with me. It wasn't that way with most of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't worried about getting killed.
Mm.
We weren't worried about making a move or going to a certain position on the island that was going to be any more dangerous than any place else.
Okay.
The only answer I can give to that is that the assignment that we have was so, how can I say this? So urgent. Yeah, the urgency was so great that the sense of urgency took the place of fear.
Wow. Okay.
Marines weren't afraid. They were going to be to that certain place at a certain time with that ammunition, no matter what. And
we don't have time to be afraid. We got to get there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is not fear. It's the intensity of the urgency of the mission. And the intensity overcomes all fear.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. We'll jump. I'm sure we're going to come back to that part of how important. Let's dig into that. We'll probably dig into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything about Iwo, anything more about Iwo that you would like to discuss?
Well, we hardly took any prisoners. They were told that we would torture them if we captured them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really unfortunate because we were just the opposite. American soldiers are not torturers, and they American soldiers, the American military are very kind people. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the Japanese surrendered, at least these few that I was aware of, we gave them our I forget what.
Are you talking about the rations?
Yeah, I'm talking about the rations. There was a certain ration box that was especially luxurious,
Oh,
and we gave them our
yeah.
best. We gave them our best boxes.
Oh, I should have
forget
written
what
that note down. I'm sorry. That's one of the things that I thought was really amazing. So you would so the Japanese were lied to. They thought that they would be tortured if they had surrendered, and so they did all sorts of different things to keep themselves from the last thing in the world they wanted, even above death, was to surrender.
Yeah. So we gave them our best rations.
Wow.
And they were astonished, absolutely amazed. And all the Japanese smoked too, and there was a little package, I think it was 4 cigarettes, and it was this C-pack.
Ah.
Yeah, the C-pack was the most luxurious lunch we had, so we gave them our C-packs. And they had all kinds of things. They had hot chocolate, cocoa, coffee, chocolate candy, cigarettes, everything in the C-pack. And so we gave them our best rations, and they were really amazed.
Just really astonished and amazed that.
Yeah, they were just astonished. They were told we would kill them or torture them.
Jeez.
And some of them, they were so afraid of surrendering, they would blow themselves up with a hand grenade as they come out of cover. And I had one of them, what must have been 5 or 6 feet of me. I think he came up behind me and blew himself up with a hand grenade.
Oh my gosh!
They were just totally deceived and felt that they had to die in the war or they weren't being loyal to their country.
Wow, Jiminy Christmas.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can finish talking about Iwo Jima without talking about the flag and the moment the flag went up, and what was your experience with that?
It was a highlight. It was only about, I think, 4 or 5 days after D-Day. The flag went up very early, long before we had secured the island, and it increased the morale a lot. When you see that many of your buddies die right before you, and you see all the death and suffering, it can be pretty discouraging and demoralizing. But there were 2 things that increased the morale there. One was the landing of a B-29 on that unfinished airship. The airship was all littered with wrecked planes and everything. This B-29 comes in safely and and makes a safe landing there. That was wonderful. And then at about the same time, the flag went up on Mount Surabaki. And it was just beautiful.
Oh, my goodness.
It increased the safe landing that plane. See, one of the reasons for taking Iwo was that the Japanese fighters on Iwo were knocking out our B-29s. And so we knocked out the fighters, and immediately planes that had been that were damaged, that couldn't make it back to I forget whether they couldn't make it back to their home base anyway. They would make emergency landings at Iwo, and that increased the morale of the Marines there tremendously.
Wow.
When those planes landed, we gathered around them and just cheered the pilots and the crew, and it was wonderful.
So the B-29
flag on Mount Surabaki and the landing of crippled B-29s was the best part of Iwo.
So the planes would come in and everybody would just surround around the planes because it's such a joyous moment, because they would otherwise not able to be, they would otherwise not make it. And they
knew they made it possible for that plane to land there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the flag part, where were you in the flag raising? Were you near it, around it, or did you just see it from afar?
I didn't see it until it was already up, but I knew the photographer I should remember his name. I'm really doing lousy on the names. Anyway, the photographer was a friend of mine. I had known him on Maui when we were there. I had a kind of a lucky experience on Maui. I won an airplane design contest while I was on restriction. When they wouldn't let me go anywhere, I had something else to do. And so this cameraman who took the picture up on Mount Surabak, he wasn't a Marine. He was in the United Press, assigned to the 4th Marine Division. And we became pretty good friends, but he had to cover my publicity for my airplane design.
Oh, so your design was filmed by the same guy that shot the filmed. I shouldn't say the word shot in war, but like that filmed the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima.
The guy who took the picture.
Yeah.
Of the 5 men raising the flag on Mount Surabaki is the same friend of mine who took my picture and covered my publicity on the airplane design before we went to Iwo.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So we were pretty good friends already.
Yeah.
And he gave me, by the way, I have an original print from that flag raising.
Oh, hold on to that. Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm hanging on to it. It's a real treasure.
Yeah, that is. That's a real American treasure. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is a treasure.
So the flag has gone up. Everybody's morale has come up.
Morale went way up when that flag went up.
So they were
amazing what that flag did for us.
Wow. So there's two fronts, and for those who don't know, there's two fronts. So there's the mountain part of it, Mount Surabaki, and then there's the north side. Now the island is 8 miles. Is it 8 miles wide or 8 miles in circumference?
8 miles square. 8 miles square.
So it's 8 miles square.
Small,
right.
Very small island.
Yeah, that's like the size of Mackinac Island, or it's a small island, but half of it, or at least the south part of it, is covered by a massive mountain, and so the Marines had to take the mountain out first and then do the rest, right? The rest of the north side,
that was the process that we followed. I'm not sure that that was part of the commandment. I'm not sure if that was required. I can't answer that.
Oh, okay.
But at least we took out Surabaki early.
Yes.
There was not a great deal of armor on it because it was such a vertical volcanic. Actually, it was a volcano.
Right.
And it was still alive. You could look down in and see the fire, and so it wasn't a place you could have a lot of artillery and stuff. So,
wow,
I'm not sure that taking Surabaki was number one on the list.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Okay. First of all, Don, thank you so much for expressing that, and I know some of these things are some of these memories are very close and very near and dear to your heart. So thank you so much for being with us and chatting about that.
Thank you.
And definitely thank you so much for your service for preserving the liberty of this generation. So let's talk about VJ Day a little bit. Like I said, we had a little survey that went out on our social, on all of our social channels, and I'm happy to report, Don, that 90% of those that responded recognize what VJ Day meant. So that is great. Probably not going to broadcast too much, but except for one, and we only had I think 6 respondents from it, and it was 50-50. So maybe it was just the time of day, right? So, but other than that, I think they did a pretty good job.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So let's talk about how the events that led up to VJ Day, and the bombs that were dropped, and kind of what happened along the way. So America is experiencing a excuse me, an unsurrendering Japanese. The Japanese cannot progress, and they can't move forward at all in their military endeavors, but they also won't surrender, and so they keep doing things like killing themselves, and obviously convincing their military members that it is better to die with honor, to take your own life, than it would be to surrender. And there's no such thing as surrendering, etc. And so we keep progressing. So the American and the Allied forces keep progressing, but the Japanese just won't surrender. And so, have I gotten everything right, Don? You just interrupt me if I'm missing something.
Have. Yeah, very definitely. Toward the end of, as the war began to wind down, the kamikaze raids were very frequent. Suicide bombers.
Right.
And also, even on Eagle, they had the suicide raids. They knew they were all going to die, but they would raid our camps, especially at night. They would raid our camps in large numbers, and they would all get killed. But that was a part of the strategy, I guess. The kamikaze killers and the suicide bombers.
The bonsai raids, the kamikaze raids. This is a really cruel way of treating your own military personnel, because you're not able to progress. And so this is the reason, by the way, why it's a different conversation. But when Robert E. Lee during the Civil War realized that he could not progress, he didn't subject his military personnel to any more death, and that's what caused him to surrender. So when you can't progress, you stop, right? You don't just keep going putting yourself under the gun and torturing yourself. But the Japanese were not doing that, so they kept going and they kept recruiting more people to do the exact same thing. And so the Americans developed, through the work of Robert Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein and the Manhattan Project, we developed these two nuclear weapons. These nuclear weapons that the world, humanity, had never seen before. The destruction capabilities of which were never seen, not by a long shot. The nuclear bombs could do, the atom bombs could do more destruction than any one thing to the 10 to 20 times combined. And now there's more complexities to it, but essentially what happens is the Americans go to do their atomic drop. Before they do that, they send out their, I think it's B-29 or B-52s, I'm not quite sure, but they drop these leaflets that say, you have got to surrender. And they send out these leaflets, millions of leaflets all across the Japanese, from Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
That they did,
And that say, get out of town. Right. And these leaflets, big leaflets that say, get out of town, leave. Because we're going to be doing something, we're going to be dropping something that has so much destruction that you will not survive. Leave, and on the way, tell your generals, your commanding officers, your leaders to surrender. We don't want to do this, right? And so we do that, no change. The first bomb is dropped on Hiroshima, and there's still no surrender. So the second one, same process, same protocol, only due to, I think it was weather circumstance. Nagasaki was not the first choice. There was a different town that was the first choice. They dropped the second bomb. And, I saw a movie recently in preparation for this conversation, and then I looked it up and I found that there was a lot there to support it. That Emperor Hirohito, is talking with his generals, and there's this moment where he's talking there. And this movie, by the way, it's a great film. It's called Emperor, stars Tommy Lee Jones. But this part of the story, I think, is really significant. Emperor Hirohito is talking with his generals, and regardless of what led them to where they are, he says, "We're done." Right? All of this destruction that has been caused, we're done causing destruction. My heart is with the Allies. I want your heart to be with me. And the military personnel, the militarists at the time, those that are controlling the military, beg the emperor to continue to go. So it's amazing to me that even after the 2 bombs are dropped, the militarists in the at the time still won't surrender. And Emperor Hirohito creates a surrender message, of which he tries to get out to the public, which was very odd. He was only a figurehead really at the time. He was worshipped as a god, and this was little g, but he was worshipped as a god from his military personnel and his the population of Japan. Very different than the way that we would operate our military engagements. So he's worshipped as a god. He's very much a figure, but he's very much a figurehead. He's not a functional, commander in chief like our president is. He's just saying general things that I think we should generally do. But in this moment, his military personnel are begging him to continue because they would rather die than surrender. And he says, "We're done with that." He creates a message, and he goes to get that message out. But the militarists even attack the imperial castle, and they try to stop that surrender message from getting out. That attempt fails, and he sends out his surrender message. And the day of that, President Truman gets the surrender message. The ultimate signing happens 2 weeks later, September 2nd, but he gets the surrender message, and then Harry Truman stands in front of the nation and officially announces that the war is over. The death, the destruction, World War II has come to an end. And that's what we commemorate with this podcast. Even though we're a day late, that's okay. On August 14th, 1945, Harry Truman announces that the war is over. So we have a little clip, and I'm going to have Jen actually back that up a little bit, and we'll share with the audience what the words that were spoken at the time. So, mute me, get me to shut up, and then we'll go from there.
Crowds before the White House await the announcement from the president that the day of days for America and her allies. Crowds before the White House await the announcement from the president that the Japs have surrendered unconditionally.
I have received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government in reply to the message forwarded to that government by the Secretary of State on August 11th. I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan. In the reply, there is no qualification.
Reporters rush out to relay the news to an anxious world and touch off celebrations throughout the country. Washington is jubilant, and in Chicago, more than 1 million sing and dance in the streets in the biggest celebration the Windy City has ever seen. Joy is unconfined. It was 4 o'clock Pacific time in San Francisco when the announcement came, and people were quick to leave their offices for an impromptu, spontaneous celebration. But it was in that city's Chinatown where Victory Day was the most joyous. Firecrackers that had been hoarded for years are set off in a triumphant roar. battle let loose all the pent-up emotions of 3 years and 8 months of war. And to the victors, the spoils. The pose may not be dignified, but the young lady is not the least upset. Peace, it's wonderful. The Navy photographer gives us a preview of Admiral Halsey's ambition to ride the Emperor's white horse through the streets of Tokyo. Their rallying cry is, "Go to it, Admiral," and so say we all of us. But the greatest, wildest celebration of all was in New York's Times Square, where 2 million people, by far the greatest in the city's history, filled the streets all day waiting for the official word. A hilarious, happy throng, they cheered every rumor that it was all over. And when President Truman's announcement came at 7 o'clock, the lid really blew off. Tens of thousands of proud American flags dotted the square, and as the day wore on, hilarity reached a high peak. Far into the night, the happy crowd screamed their relief at the end of the greatest war in history. From early Tuesday morning, the celebration went on for 24 hours. New York never celebrated like this before, but never did they have a better reason.
Okay, so Dawn, here we are, VJ Day. What was that like for you?
We had been issued all new equipment. We got all new ducks. We left our old beat-up ducks on Iwo Jima, and we were training on at Lahaina, where we've heard recently where all these fires have taken place. In any case, we were training. We were ready to go back to land on Japan. We were going to invade Japan with our amphibious trucks and all of our other military and our bombers and so forth. And so when the bomb was dropped, you can be assured there was plenty of celebration on Maui. Plenty of celebration. We had parties every night.
Wow.
And, of course, I don't know if you know it or not, but the length of time overseas, they assigned numbers to each of us. Each of us had a number, and that number was a priority return home number.
Oh, wow.
So those who had been overseas the longest were the first to be brought home.
Oh, wow.
And, so it was, my number was high enough, I think. Anyway, I was brought home in November of 1945, and that was a great day for me, and it was a great day for those Marines who paid such a high price for our freedom. And I guess you might say the reason I never gave up defending the Constitution is because I know the price that was paid for it, and the price was incredible, absolutely incredible. And that's why I continue to protect the United States and the Constitution of the United States, and insist that we be obedient to it and not mess around like we're doing now.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that you brought that up because that's kind of where we're going next. So, I was visiting. My experiences are not as interesting as yours, so I kind of feel bad sharing it. But I was at a relative's home the other day. And I saw. She said, "Yeah, I think you'd be interested in that." She goes upstairs out of the attic and she pulls down this box and unwraps the box and pulls the paper covering the newspaper. But she lets me hold in my hand a newspaper that was printed in Binghamton, New York. And in just in big black letters on a very yellow newspaper, a very brown and yellow newspaper. It says, "The war is over." And how much joy and jubilee the entire world felt just with that announcement. I mean, the very next page, the articles talked about how people just filled the churches, and the churches were just booming. They couldn't hold the amount of people that wanted to come in. And how grateful they were, and how joyous they were, and how much kissing, and how much all this stuff was going on.
Yeah.
They went to churches and had children. Like that's really what happened there. And the baby boom was really as big as any bomb could do, but more. I know my grandfather, when my father tried to talk to him about the war a lot, he would say, "We're not doing that anymore. We're here to build now, and we're here to construct, and the war is over." And so so the next thing that happens is two things occur. So Hirohito, first of all, steps down as a god, and he tells his nation, I'm not a god. That's not, don't worship this. This is not the right thing to do. Worshiping, I'm a man, and that's it. And I'd rather build our nation as a man than destroy our nation or be the figurehead of some destruction as a god. And evil will no longer have a scapegoat in me, essentially, in other Japanese words. So, Dawn, you come back from the States, and where did you go right after that?
Well, I'll tell you a little secret.
Oh, yes, sir.
I never got promoted. I was PFC for 3 years, and that's unusual in the Marine Corps because almost everyone gets promoted after the first year. I went to my captain one time, and I said, "How come everybody's being made corporal?" I said, "I'm doing the same work everybody else is doing, and I'm doing a good job, I think. How come I'm not getting promoted?" And he said, "Because you don't have a high school education. Is we can't make you a non-commissioned officer unless you've had a high school education." So, joining young, I hadn't finished high school. So the first thing I did when I got out of the war is I went back to high school.
Wow.
I went to Jordan High in Sandy, Utah.
Yep.
Finished up my high. Actually, I didn't have to do the whole year. They came out with a GED, and I passed the GED and graduated with everybody else.
Really? So first of all, I think that's just this amazing picture. You've got, a World War II veteran finishing high school, sitting down and doing algebra with those who have never even served before.
That's exactly what I was doing.
You could just look at the whole class and say, "You're welcome,"
I was sitting there with those kids. Well, it was, I was kind of, they looked up to me.
Of course
so
they did.
That kind of softened the embarrassment a little bit.
Well, that's exactly it. Don, I think your experience is just so special because you have that ability to go, look, I'm fighting for certain things, and then I'm going to come back and take advantage of them, right? And you come back and you join the public school system, even for the short while that it was. But you're like, this is the reason why we fight. So we have the ability to be educated in a free way, right?
Yeah, that's right. The freedom to do so. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was free to come back to high school, and the principal there at Jordan High welcomed me very warmly. He knew I wouldn't be able to graduate. I didn't have enough credits, and but I just wanted to be better educated, and I was really amazed that I was able to take that GED and graduate with everybody else.
That's fantastic. That is just so great. How many high school students these days would have that type of pedigree at all, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Just you're sitting here doing algebra while you're like, yeah, you served. I'm a veteran. Hey guys, how you doing?
That's what I was. Yeah.
So you come back, you finish high school, and then I understand that you served a proselyting mission.
Right after, in fact, the same month I graduated from high school, I was called on on the LDS mission to Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. It was called the North Central States Mission.
The North
And
Central.
I was there for about 2 years and 3 months, something like that, a little over 2 years.
See, and this is where I think the story is. That, military engagements liberate our countries. They protect our liberties. Missionary engagements help us to exercise those liberties and honestly liberate our souls. They give us the opportunity to grow closer to God. Without the sacrifice of a military engagement and the protection, we would not have the ability to worship God the way that the individual would want to worship. We would not have the right to conscience. And so seeing that all embodied in one person is really great. And so what was so let's come back to your relationship with God, if that's okay.
Sure.
Your at first, adolescence, 15, 16, 18 years old, you get foxhole religion pretty quick.
I had fake religion. That's right, I did.
Foxhole religion. You come back and you partake in the education system, and then you serve a mission. Tell me, what's your relationship with God at this point? Obviously, it's a little bit stronger than it was before.
I had some real blessings. At Jordan High, they also taught seminary. They had a seminary class right across the street, and I signed up for that, and I was elected president of the seminary graduating class. So I had a really deep feeling there. I memorized a lot of scriptures, read a lot of the Bible and the Book of Mormon, and I just wanted to serve. I wanted to go on a mission, and my parents were not active, and they didn't intend to do that. But I had won this money from the Popular Science airplane contest, and I used that to go on my mission. In those days, you could go on a mission for $1,000, and that's what I had, so that's what I did.
And you had kept it. So to rewind a little bit, so while you were on Maui, training and being and waiting essentially, Popular Science had a contest. You had entered into a contest, and you had won this airplane engineering contest essentially.
Yeah, yeah, it was really amazing. See, obviously I had very little education.
Uh-huh.
I hadn't graduated from high school, and I wasn't exactly what you'd call a great scholar.
Uh-huh.
But in the Marines, I knew that it was a handicap, a serious handicap. And so I spent a lot of time in the library on Maui, learning as much as I could and on the fundamentals. And I was excited over automobiles and airplanes. So I read a lot about them and how they work, and came up with a jet-propelled, privately owned plane to submit to Popular Science. And I was really surprised that I won the first prize in the amateur part of it.
Wow, that's great. And you use that money, right? You use the prize earnings from
I used that money to go on a mission.
To serve a mission, right? To share the gospel of Jesus Christ, that which gives us the ultimate liberty and the ultimate freedom is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And
I was blessed on my mission. I was tremendously blessed. A great spirit and a great mission president. William Kilpack was my mission president there. He was a marvelous individual.
Wow.
So he kind of took me on. He knew my parents. He kind of abandoned me. He kind of took me on like I was his son. And that was a wonderful thing to happen to me.
Mentors are so important. Good mentors are incredibly important. Choose them wisely. Having friends like you, Don, and examples like my father are those that have really, I know, have helped me throughout my life. But absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And you're doing that as well.
Okay, now let me ask: Are you James Thompson's son?
Carrie Thompson's son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm really thrilled to get that all put together, and
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing that you're doing here today is very, very commendable.
Yeah.
And beautifully done, by the way.
We're all about halfway through it. We're on page 2 of 4, Don, if you got extra time. But so okay, so you're serving, and here's the thing: you're serving God, you're serving your church, and your parents are not as supportive of the idea as well.
No,
and so there's what are the challenges? What are you leaning on to overcome those challenges? What are your prayers like here? There's obviously not foxhole religion. It's something serious at this point.
It's not something that happens all of a sudden. We really love the scriptures, and initially, as a young people, at least as a young person, I didn't understand all of the scriptures. I didn't know. I'd read a passage, for example, that said to pray continually, pray always. How do you pray always? I got a lot of things to do. I have other things on my mind. I can't just be praying day and night when I'm supposed to be working and doing things. And,
your knees get awfully worn out doing that. Yeah.
And I figured out what that meant, and I figured out how to do that, and that was a real blessing for me. And also prayer. I learned that prayer is more than what would you say? More than the verses, or even Bible verses. It's a turning of your heart to that great unseen Maker, and giving your heart to Jesus Christ, and say, "Look, I'm not much. I'm nothing. Just show me which way to go. Help me to remember you always. Help me to keep my mind clean and pure, so that I'm not wishing for things I shouldn't hope for." And once you get a clear, how can I say it? Once your mind is accustomed to thinking purity, fulfilling that scripture that is something like, and let thy thoughts be garnished with virtue constantly. I think that's what it says. Well, how do you have constant virtue? And I finally did. I finally accomplished constant virtue. And it's been a real blessing to me.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much.
And thank you.
So let's change gears just a little bit. What was post-war America like, especially as a missionary? Right. I think it's fair to say. Is it fair to say that seminary and the need for the desire to serve more inspired you to serve a mission, a proselyting mission? What was post-war America like? I mean, these are happy days, right?
Well, yes, but I can't compare them because I didn't have any religion in pre-war America. I just didn't have it, so I can't give you an honest comparison of the difference. I don't know the difference.
Okay. Okay.
I lived an unreligious life. I was looking for fun. I was looking for happiness. I was looking for good friends.
Looking for a good-looking suit and some attention from the girls, yeah.
Yeah, and I was looking at girls, yeah.
And now, due to your service in both military and mission, you're just a different person now, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Both of these things change us in unforeseen ways. Don, one of our previous conversations, you had, so you've served a mission, you've come back, and you had shared with me that that some of your friends had gone to rebuild Japan, and you had been invited to go, But you said, guys, I appreciate that, but I can't.
Are you talking about General Motors opportunities?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that yeah? I majored in automobile design. I was interested in aircraft because of my airplane design, of course, but I couldn't get into it because I was so poor at mathematics. My score in arithmetic was horrible, and designing aircraft, it entails a great deal of calculus, and so I thought I would be smart if I go to automobiles, which I've always had an interest in. So I majored in automobile design at Art Center College of Design in California.
Okay.
Which is one of the things they specialize in there.
And you had been given an opportunity to go to Japan to help rebuild Japan, but that was something that you couldn't get your heart, even after giving yourself to the gospel, just something you couldn't give your heart to, simply because
I had a hard time with that idea. My friends, my General Motors, my former students are working at General Motors and Chrysler and Ford, and they were leaving their jobs and going to Japan to redesign the Toyota and the earlier models of Japanese cars. Incidentally, that should be of interest to your audience because everybody brags about, boy, the Japanese really outsmarted us, didn't they? They took this modern car and turned it into a very powerful, long, durable machine. Well, it wasn't done by the Japanese at all. It was done by my friends from General Motors. They went over to Japan and redesigned. Japan didn't have anything. That Toyota, had to push it over a hill. You couldn't have enough power to go over a hill, and
Wow.
It looked ugly. It looked like a cross-eyed clown. It was an ugly car, and my friends redesigned it both from the standpoint of style and power and everything else. Don't let anybody tell you the Japanese outsmarted us. They did not. That was all American young men over there whom I knew who went to Japan and redesigned their cars.
The Toyota engines are American-made, ladies and gentlemen. That's
right.
Incredible.
They're American designed.
Yes, sir.
Japan had one advantage that we didn't have here. They had a lot of free labor. Lots of labor.
Wow. Okay.
And the Japanese laborers were under a dictatorship. They didn't dare make a mistake. In the United States, you work for GM and you make a lot of mistakes and they'll forgive you.
Right.
In Japan, you're in trouble if you make one little mistake. So they did a wonderful job of manufacturing, but they had no creativity whatsoever.
Wow. I think we're kind of getting to the point of the discussion that we can bring something up like this. It's interesting the role that like we said earlier that military and missionary service brings us, and as you said that the Japanese were very dutiful, very afraid to make mistakes, and so at this point in history, Hirohito has stepped down as a god. Has opened the door for other religions, and you're in the United States. You've served a proselyting mission for Christ and for the LDS Church, and you're building now, or you're protecting the Constitution at this point. Not to get too far ahead, but the next generation, so that would be my father and my uncle, they are called to serve in Japan as proselyting mission in a proselyting mission.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And they went. They had no reason to say no.
Well, that's exactly it. So Uncle James serves in 71, and Dad serves in 77. Dad serves in Nagoya. Uncle James serves in the East Asia mission, and these are the way that missions operated then were different from each other. But what I think is really, really interesting is they're serving in Japan within the same emperor as you had before. So Emperor Hirohito is still there. but it's a completely different nation. It is a nation now of prosperity, but most importantly, it is a nation where religious liberty and the relationships God has with the individual reigns. And so when my dad would, and Dad may bring this up in the Q&A afterwards if he's here, but when he went, he was running into people. Some of them were still worshiping Hirohito, even though Hirohito had stepped down. It wasn't illegal for them to. It was no longer illegal to worship in any way that you wanted. And at the time, while you were building the gospel and serving the Constitution of the United States, those were, the work of building the kingdom as well was going on in Japan, and they experienced what they called the Christian boom from, I think it was 50 through the 70s. I think it may not even, my dates might be wrong with that, but it just expanded, and so
I understand.
Yeah, and so I think, with every crisis, with every big catastrophe, there's always one really big lie, right? With the Titanic, we were just in the Smoky Mountains the other day, and oddly enough, go figure why it's there. But long story why it's there. But there's a Titanic museum there, and with the Titanic, it wasn't because of the people. It wasn't because they didn't have the best captains, moving the ships and all that other stuff. And it wasn't because the people weren't smart, but the big lie that they were believing was that the ship was unsinkable, which is an insult to God. And the big lie that we have here in World War II is that we are worshiping false gods, and it is obvious, and it's whether it's the Führer or Mussolini or in Russia's case it's these economic systems. And in Japan's case, it's the wrong god. It's a living person that should not be worshipped as a god, and he changes, and the nation changes, and the people that are called to protect our religious liberty over there don't need to be, called back to serve proselyting missions. We need each other, and those two different types of attitudes. So around that time period, that's where you start dedicating your life to protecting and preserving the Constitution. And for those who didn't know, I didn't bring that up in your introduction. I should have, but you have such a long, such a strong pedigree. You had dedicated your life to protecting the Constitution. You've written some books. What happened in the 80s that was really interesting? And it was about the Reagan times, between Reagan and then Carter. Tell us a little bit about the things that you had been doing to protect our liberties via the Constitution there.
Well, I think probably as a result of being in the Marine Corps, I looked for the reasons that things happen. Here, the United States had just won this tremendous war, a victory beyond any victory whatsoever, loved and respected throughout the world, and yet weird things were taking place. Things were unconstitutional, especially. For example, we established something called a Department of Energy. Nowhere in the Constitution is that a prerogative of the federal government. And the Constitution only delegates power. It doesn't, how can I say this? The only powers the federal government has are those that are specifically designated in the United States Constitution.
That's right.
And so in the 1980s, not suddenly, but over a long period of time, we have all of these departments, the Department of Transportation and Human Relations and Education. These are not the role of the United States government, and they're not provided for in the Constitution. if something is really essential or something that we feel should be in there, then the Constitution should be amended accordingly so that it's provided for. But what we have now today is billions of dollars being spent on departments and agencies that are unconstitutional, have absolutely no constitutional authority whatsoever. And this is hurting the United States drastically. It is the cause of nearly all problems. I would say almost at least 90% of United States problems are caused by unconstitutional activities or of our federal government. So you can see why I've been battling this and trying to alert the citizens to the fact that their elected officials, especially Congress, where the laws originate, are need to know that they're not going to get reelected if they continue to mess with the Constitution and authorize things that are simply some totally outrageous and some that seem like they might be of some value but have no constitutional authority.
Constitution.
So that's what I've been doing.
Constitutional leaders. That's what we need. You know, there's things that we do with Under God Project. We'll get into that in a little bit. But tell us a little bit about your work with the constitutional crisis that was ensuing in the was it the late 80s?
Yeah. Yes, and I'm glad you brought it up. I've been fighting this for over 40 years. I started fighting what they call the Convention of States project, which really surfaced in 1983. The nation was only 2 states away from a convention. It requires 2/3 of the states, which is 34, and we had 32 had called for a convention, and that really ran shockwaves through me. I knew that we could not have a constitutional convention today with the mentality that have brought our country to the point we are now. We don't have a George Washington or a James Madison or a Benjamin Franklin. We don't have men who would write a constitution for our liberties. We have men who would write a constitution for power. So I immediately went to work fighting what they called the Convention of States, which is, even in itself, there's no such thing. A constitution doesn't provide for a convention of the states. They use Article 5. Article 5 proposes at least that 2/3 of the states have to apply for a convention, and then you'll have one. And if that happened, the men that run a convention today would absolutely destroy it. They would destroy our country. We would have no country left.
I love how you articulated that. We don't have men today that would write our Constitution for our liberties, but they would write it for their own power.
For their own power.
Amen.
Precisely. In fact, they've already, the so-called, what I call the insiders, some people call them the conspiracy, which is pretty much the same thing. The very wealthy individuals, they're constantly brought up in my book, The President Makers,
Mm-hmm.
How billionaires control U.S. and foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, that's why I wrote the book, and I hope people will get it. You can get it at Amazon.com. But in any case, we had this convention proposal has been brought up and distorted and lied about on what wonderful thing it's going to do for the country. But the fact is, everything they propose that is supposed to be logical is already in the Constitution. For example, they say, well, the Constitution has no balanced budget amendment. Well, why doesn't it have a balanced budget amendment? Didn't our founding fathers know about a balanced budget? Yes, they did. Instead of balancing the budget, they limited the power. So if a country abides by the power limitations, the budget is automatically balanced. You don't have these $1 trillion deficits that you have to face and vote for every few years.
Uh-huh.
You automatically balance the budget when you abide by the limits of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So the balanced budget thing is phony. Another one is term limits. They say, well, these guys are in there too long, and once they're in there a long time, they start taking unfair advantage of us. They learn all the tricks, and they learn how to corrupt the system. No, we had term limits during the first 8 years of our country. We had it. We had term limits up until the time the Constitution was rewritten, which was 1787. So why didn't term limits work? Term limits did not work because a man would get all of his corruption over with early because he knew he didn't have to stand again for re-election. Hey, they can't hurt me. I'm going to steal all I can steal while I'm in government because I can't get reelected anyway, so poo on you. That's what we had, and nobody's ever brought that up in these in their professed desire for a convention. Term limits is destructive. Doesn't give you the security that you need, and it doesn't give the elected officials the responsibility that they need to bear. They can do anything they want in that first term.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's really the antithesis of so many arguments today, even in the conservative movement, Republican Party. A lot of people are very excited about term limits. I love that you brought that up, Don. I think we ought to have you back to talk just about your work more with the Convention of States and how the Constitution is the solution. I would love to talk. I think that's just a whole podcast in and of itself.
Thank you. I would be very anxious and eager to do that because if we don't get that convention stopped, we're going to lose our country.
Okay, we'll have you back.
We're in bad enough shape right now, but we'll lose everything if we lose the Constitution.
Let's do it. We'll book some time. We're actually going to be in St. George, hopefully, here shortly. So we'll get together. We'll have you live, right?
That's great. Well, it'll be amazing to most people because I'm 96, and and lots of people don't think I'm still alive.
Guys, he's 96, okay?
So if you put me on live, that'll be an awakening call for some people.
Yes, sir. And then as well, I want to have you to sit you down and talk about your book, President Makers. I do recommend it, everybody. There are some things in there that have some of the topics that we've even talked about today, but they're a little bit more.
I have a lot of that in my book.
Yeah.
If anybody that's read my book knows that it covers the gamut. Yep. Including the solution. It's not a doomsday book. It's a book of how we got into our problems we're in today and how to get out of them.
Yes, sir. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's fantastic. So, the 80s is about protecting the Constitution all throughout that. It's interesting. My wife and I, we have all these reminders of the sacrifice that you and your generation made. And the meaning of that sacrifice just throughout our own lives. I was called to serve a proselyting mission in no other than Hiroshima, Japan. I actually served in Peace Park, so it's called Heiwa Koen.
That's wonderful. I didn't know that.
Exactly.
That's exciting.
So I think that to me is when you had told me this that you couldn't go to Japan because you can't serve these people in that way because these are the people that killed your friends. And
I just couldn't get that out of my mind.
Yeah, and to me, I'm like, that's okay, because that's why God calls the next generation to do that. I can't help but think about my grandmother, who she would talk to me all the time about how she had a hard time with my great uncle Dale, my grandfather, my great uncle Harold. They all, like you, served in World War II. Uncle Dale dies. Uncle Parley Dale dies. My father's named after him. And
I knew Dale.
Yeah. And it was my grandmother, her children, her two boys, her only two boys. She had 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. Her only 2 boys are called to proselyte. And in order to proselyte, you need to love the people. In order to bring the message of Jesus Christ, you need to love them.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Grandma Beverly, as wonderful as a woman as she was, really had a hard time with that. And part of her, arc was to, her maturation was to make that change. Not all of us are called to make that change. You weren't called to make that change. I wasn't called to make that change, but we need each other, because I need to know that you protected the liberties that give me the ability to then love and preach the gospel and give people that option of spiritual freedom, and allow them to choose which one they will do. But you're the one who has come before and laid and protected that liberty and allowed that to happen. Obviously not just you, you weren't the only one there, but that's what those engagements are for. And so they have their places, and so we need to be very, very careful and aware of how we choose to get engaged in military conflicts. I think we're a little excited about them today, to say the least. But they do have their place. It's interesting. My wife and I were talking. We talk all the time, but we were chatting about something, and we realized that my wife and I, we get married after I come back from my mission. After that, I was called to do something else that I think is somewhat interesting. We have, like I said, we have all these interesting reminders, and one of those was I was part of an ambassador group in the form of a dance tour that went to Russia during my college years. But one of the places that we went was Stalingrad. It's now Leningrad. But we got to see how the Russians, the identity of World War II from the Russian perspective. And that's a different podcast. It's a different idea. But, like I said, there's, World War II is very precious and special to me. And that's one of the reasons why I love having you on the show. But preserving its identity and the meaning of that sacrifice is something that I think more of us as Americans need to understand. And so my wife, she was there's a connection. Here's one more connection. So my wife is born the year she was born in 89, right? Emperor Hirohito, he dies January 7th of 89, so that's kind of weird. But Jen celebrates her birthday. She was born, the day she was born is none other than December 7th. I'm going to trip over that. December 7th. So,
well, then you and your wife are destined to give this history.
Something's happening, and it's weird, and that's honestly nothing more than just crazy coincidences. That doesn't mean much other than to be reminded of the meaning of the sacrifice of those that have gone before us. And so
but it's still great. It's exceptional.
Absolutely.
I believe I'm more miracle attuned than you are. I have a lot of miracles in my life. I do. Miracles happen to me every day, and I purposely don't tell them because people don't believe in miracles, so I just kind of keep it to myself.
Oh, don't keep them to yourself, Don. Don't keep them to yourself. Share them. Please share them. We actually, Dad started doing this when I was about 15, 16 years old. He started keeping a miracle journal. And he's up
really?
in the and he has
good for him.
Yep, he's got new ones every week, and they're numbered and they're specific.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And for God Bless This American Family. So my wife and I, we make this educational nonprofit called God Bless This American Family, and then we start Under God Project with our team members. I can't leave out my father and I actually help. It was my father, my wife, and I put that whole thing together. Those two organizations. And Dad has been keeping a miracle journal for us in our organization. We really ought to share that, actually. We ought to share the numbers.
Yeah, you really should.
I mean, we're Under God Project. I don't know why we're not doing that. Yeah.
Well, your name of your their program is Under God, right? Under God Project.
Absolutely.
That would be very appropriate.
Absolutely. Of course it would be. What am I thinking? Thank you for
and you know,
reminding me of that.
the miracle is how can I say it? There's something, I can't remember where the scripture is, something to the effect that when miracles cease, we're in trouble.
Uh-huh.
And that's not exactly the words of the scripture, but it's there somewhere. And I've thought about that a lot, and I've had a lot of amazing things happen. So maybe we ought to have a miracle program. Huh?
I would love that. You know what? I think we're going to start changing that. I think we're going to start announcing the miracles that we've put on our podcast. That might be something we should just absolutely incorporate. I don't know why we haven't been thinking about it before. With that in mind, we, Under God Project is about inviting God into our national identity. And so we have, I'm going to speak to the audience here. We have activities and tasks for families, congregational leaders, and civil servants to invite God into our national identity, to preserve the meaning of the sacrifice of those who have gone before us in military and missionary service. Don,
I'm sure you're doing that. How do I get your program? Is it online?
Oh, sure, yeah. So, we have an app, and part of the project itself are, again, their tasks and activities. I'll get you one for yourself, Don. You don't have to worry about paying for it, but we start with a compact. I'll actually introduce that in a second. But Don, what would you tell this generation that they must preserve? And along with that, what do you see that this generation needs in order to preserve it?
Are you asking that now, or is that theoretical?
Oh, that's.
Are you asking me that question?
Yes, sir. What do you see that this generation needs to preserve, as you've preserved the liberties of our generation?
Yeah, I think the most important thing they need to know is that America was not just an accident of discovery, that it was a special land, a land chosen by God, a land distinctive both in its physical attributes and in the spirit of freedom. The Lord had held it back for generations from many different explorers, and its discovery was directed by the Lord, and the people, at least the initial occupants of the country, were brought here by the Lord to be a special light to the world. That's the first thing I would try to teach our people.
What do you think they need in order to preserve that information? Do you feel like it's courage, patience, tolerance?
Well, what we need is more of that kind of understanding from our elected leaders. Our elected leaders dismiss the divine origin of our country and try to become the divine leaders themselves. And that's the problem we have.
I love that you articulated that just that way, right? Because the big lie of World War II is that these are divine leaders themselves, whether it's the Fuhrer or it's, God with a little g, Emperor Hirohito.
Or somebody even elected to Congress.
That's true.
They suddenly take upon themselves a superiority and don't understand that they're there to serve the country.
Mm-hmm. Right. Humility before God. I love that. I love that, Don. This part of the program, we're going to get into the now what section. Don, when you and I met, when we started talking years ago, you had suggested, when we're kind of formulating what, Under God Project is, at that time it was God Bless This American Family. It was just that, we had discussed things that people need to do because we're not engaged in a military engagement right now. That's not how we necessarily show our patriotism, right? There was no
that wouldn't help as much today, I don't
right.
think.
So Under God Project,
There was a different atmosphere during World War II.
yep.
It was a very strong patriotism and a dedication to winning the war. Now we just all we want to do is win some sort of a treaty that doesn't solve anything.
Right. So what we've done is we've put together a series of activities that invite God into our national identity, because now is the time for this generation of families to preserve the liberties of the next generation and honor the meaning of the sacrifice those who served before us.
Very well put.
So, you know, we at Under God Project, God Bless This American Family, you know, we have a couple of sayings. God makes families, and it's families that make nations. And our country is a reflection of what our families make it to be. So are our congregations. So so is our national identity. And so it's not military leaders or political leaders or even our pastors and congregational leaders that define what America is, but America is defined at the kitchen table.
That's very, very well put. I like that.
When our generation stands today, we prevent we prevent the need for our children to sacrifice tomorrow. So the way that we do in Under God Project, we have an in-home family experience in the form of a compact. It's this 30 by 30 or 30 by 20 compact experience with, comes with a feather pen and a lot of really great and fun things. Oh, Jen's showing it on the thing. This is great. Really great fun handmade process that can invite God into your home in a national way, a national promise that says we are one family under God, and so. We've got a couple of podcasts that kind of express all of the fun experiences that you have with that. It comes in the mail. It's a big thing. There's a feather pen, and just like the Mayflower compact signers or a Thomas Jefferson, or even even those that served during World War II, you get to experience inviting God into our national identity in a fun way that you can do with your kids at the kitchen table. So download the app, check out the podcast, join the fun, join the family. Like I said, don't worry about the price right now, guys. We have matching donors that are waiting to be matched, and they're flying off the shelf fast. So if you can swing the price, though, that's great. Do that. But we declare through doing those activities and others, we can declare that we are one nation under God. And I think it's appropriate to share this story here. Don, you lived through this, so you can speak to it. In 1954, Dwight Eisenhower added under God to.
That's right, he did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was because
That's
for
right.
6
that
years.
was added on.
It was because
I remember.
You do?
Excuse me, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Well, for 6 years prior, from 1948 to 1954, American families were doing that on their own. American families were all across the nation. And so it was picked up, just a dad. I've shared this experience on a different podcast, but I'll share it here today. Just a dad out of Chicago recognized that the Iron Curtain had gone up. World War II was over. Liberty was secure for their generation, but the Iron Curtain has gone up, and they wanted to distinguish themselves differently across the nation than others. And so the Pledge of Allegiance, said one nation, indivisible, and right in the middle, he just started saying under God. There was a little bit more formalities to that. The Daughters of American Revolution, Sons of American Revolution, Kiwanis Club, etc. Those Lions Club, they had picked it up and officially started doing that. In 1954, a bill was proposed by a Democrat from Michigan, but quickly joined with a Republican. I know, all these surprises in here. Quickly joined by his Republican colleagues, passed very quickly. And the arguments for that was because they wanted to identify themselves as a non-communist nation, and that's what it meant to that to that generation, that we were a land of liberty, and that we were one nation, and God is the center of that liberty. It is the most essential liberty that we have, that right to conscience, that right to choose whether we accept this scripture or that scripture, or the right to choose individually, and not as a collective, but individually, what that means to us. And so
that's great.
Under
I
God,
appreciate.
yeah. So under God, though, what that guy, and I don't even remember the guy's name. There's not even a link to his name on the Wikipedia page if you go that far. He's
I'm sure the mass media would like to not know his name. I'm sure they would not want to give him any credit for that.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing, is it's okay. That's the way that America has always been. It's not created so much by our pastors and our preachers and the celebrities of our day, but it's created by our families. He was invoking, when he said that, he invoked that which Abraham Lincoln introduced in 1863, when he said, "This nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom." Now, under God was not in his original speech. God gave him
it was. I knew that. I didn't realize how it got in there.
God gave him the motive, the inspiration to say it, and he did. Now that, of course, that speech was, of course, reflecting that which happened in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence, in 1787 with the Constitution, but as well, all of those things reflect that which comes well before in our founding document of our first governing document of our nation, which would be the Mayflower Compact. And those.
Well, Andy, let's plan on.
It's getting late for you, isn't it?
A program about this so-called Constitutional Convention. We call it the CON-CON.
Yes, sir.
And if you want to know the correct name, we use the third con there, the CON-CON-CON. But that would be extremely important, and I would appreciate doing that.
Let's let you go. Yeah, absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was going to read some of this. I don't think it's really necessarily important to do right now, but on the compact, there's some strong language there. Just the last part of it is, it says, "We pledge to strengthen our faith and family ties, to uplift and encourage one another, and to stand firm in the face of any effort within or without to dim our light, love, or liberty for one another. May God give us patience, strength, and peace as we keep these promises to one another, and may God bless this American family. In the name of God, amen." So I encourage you, those who have their compacts and are just waiting for that perfect moment to get the family together and put it all together, to pray, personalize, share your experiences, and pay it forward. It's all on the app there. Don, thank you so much for the time. Let's close here. We have a closing that we like to do. We say, "May God bless you, may God bless America, and may God bless this American family." Don, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
You have a great night.
You too.